From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. The president of Venezuela, Nicolás Maduro, has relaunched the national pharmaceutical program from an automatic warehouse in Miranda State. Maduro is also looking to boost the country's pharmaceutical industry and increase the national production of medicine.
The peoples of the world are behind Venezuela, and I'm sure that we have the support of people in the US in this fight for peace, development and independence. There is going to be a large march on the White House to give Donald Trump the signatures signed by people in the US and to tell Donald Trump, hands off Venezuela.
And life has returned to normal for Venezuelans who were affected by the attack on the country's power grid. Electricity was fully restored on March 13 after intensive efforts by the power company's engineers to restore power. During the outage, the government worked round the clock to provide food, water and other services to its citizens.
Our Venezuela tried the best to guarantee the supply of food. Our president also provided us emergency food. You can see here, we're keeping fighting. There is no other way. But the Western media are saying we are starving. No, we're in need of supplies, mainly medicine, but there is no case of starving to death because of lack of food, I can promise.
Now to Geneva, where the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, has criticized Washington's sanctions against Venezuela. She also made a call to resolve the political differences in the country.
Although this pervasive and devastating economic and social crisis began before the imposition of the first economic sanctions in 2017, I am concerned that the recent sanction on financial transfer related to the sale of Venezuelan oil within the United States may contribute to aggravating the economic crisis with possible repercussions on people's basic rights and well-being.
This comes after former UN Special Rapporteur Alfred de Zayas, along with journalists Max Blumenthal and Anya Parampil, addressed a panel on Venezuela at the UN Human Rights Council on Tuesday. The two journalists had just returned from Venezuela. De Zayas criticized the Human Rights Commission's past report on Venezuela, saying they were politicized. Members of Code Pink, Answer Coalition, the Party for Socialism and Liberation, and other citizens protested outside the Venezuelan embassy in Washington, D.C. They say that the United States government is violating the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations by allowing a non-elected opposition group to take over the diplomatic property belonging to the elected government of Venezuela.
By allowing a number of other people's of embassies by non-elected officials is not quite what international law calls for. It's called a theft. It's called a robbery. And what we have here is that we are saying that the opposition's entry into a Venezuelan embassy is illegal.
Some activists had decided to spend the night at the embassy of Venezuela after the Venezuelan opposition reportedly took over 3 diplomatic offices.
Hi, my name is Morgan Archuquina. I'm here at the Venezuelan Embassy in Washington, D.C. in Georgetown with the Answer Coalition and Code Pink. And we're here today to occupy this embassy, on behalf of the legitimate, the democratically elected government of Venezuela, because this building is Venezuelan state property. It's the property of a state that is democratically empowered by the people of Venezuela. It is a democratically legitimate government. This belongs to the people of Venezuela. It doesn't belong to imposter governments. It doesn't belong to who anybody else says is the government except for the people of Venezuela.
Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arriaza spoke directly to those who arrived at the Venezuelan embassy in Washington. He expressed gratitude for the solidarity and the quick response.
I am sure that the American people, the North American people, have a word here, and that you can stop many things from happening. And the example that you are giving today is really, really important. You are all over the media in the world.
Chilean police fired tear gas and used water cannons on protesters during a rally by the Mapuche indigenous community. Police tried to block protesters from marching on one of the main streets of the capital. Hundreds of Mapuches rejected the militarization of their lands in the south of the country. They also condemned the murder of Mapuche activist Camilo Catrillanca 4 months ago during a police siege of his land. Hundreds of people have marched in Costa Rica to demand justice for the brutal murder of a well-known indigenous activist. People gathered to remember Sergio Rojas, who was shot 15 times in his home on Monday. Rojas had previously requested police protection as he had received death threats. He was a fierce defender of the lands of the Bribri indigenous people. And Brazilian protesters have gathered outside Rio de Janeiro's state government building to commemorate children killed by stray bullets. Protesters held a Brazilian flag with 53 holes, representing the 53 children killed by stray bullets between 2007 and 2019 in Rio. It's difficult to gather the exact number of such incidents since there are few official statistics, but according to a United Nations report, Brazil had the largest number of deaths by stray bullets in Latin America and the Caribbean between 2014 and 2015.
It is the same. The police keep coming to favelas, keeps killing, and the state does nothing. The state needs to know that this is happening when they put police on the streets, where there are schools, where there are kindergartens, where there are human beings.
The government of Nicaragua has released a statement outlining the agenda of proceedings for the meetings with the opposition. It emphasized a commitment to peace and citizens' rights. The statement also said that the negotiating table has decided to extend a formal invitation to the Secretary General of the Organization of American States. A similar invitation was made to the International Red Cross Committee. We have more stories coming up. We'll be back.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Get your body. Tuesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Citizens in El Salvador have demonstrated against a move to privatize water services. University students, trade unionists, and members of social organizations protested in San Salvador against a bill in Congress that would permit the privatization of water provision in the country. A similar demonstration was held in 2018 when opposition right-wing parties first hoped to introduce a law privatizing the water supply.
We invite all the Salvadoran people, the workers, the students, the poor, to be a part of these demonstrations because the right to water is for all. We cannot allow the large private companies to keep on stealing the little we have left.
The Citizens' Revolution movement in Ecuador has formally requested that the National Assembly investigate a corruption case against President Lenín Moreno. Here's Ecuadorian lawmaker Amapola Naranjo's response to this new investigation.
It is not normal that the National Assembly's role be manipulated and obstructed.
UN General Assembly President María Fernanda Espinosa is in Argentina attending a South-South cooperation meeting. She spoke exclusively to Telesur, and here's what she had to say about the summit.
40 years ago, the first South-South meeting was held here in Buenos Aires. This meeting generated its action plan, known as the Buenos Aires Action Plan, which has guided the forms of the South-South cooperation in the world. 40 years later, we have had the opportunity to evaluate the accomplishments of the cooperation. And not only that, we can also project its future. Certainly, the geopolitical scenario has changed in the last 40 years, meaning we are adapting the South-South agenda to the current situation in the world. The idea is to have a document to renew the South-South cooperation, projecting a future with the past 40 years' experience.
The impeachment of far-right President Jair Bolsonaro is being debated in Brazil after a judge said Bolsonaro broke the law by posting a controversial video on his Twitter account.
A video Bolsonaro shared on Twitter that defamed Rio's carnival festivities and diminished the LGBT community has landed him in hot water. It has brought the president's morals and ethics into question while fueling calls for his impeachment. The opposition is even considering asking Bolsonaro to submit to a mental health assessment.
There are 65 hypotheses of a crime of responsibility that a president can commit. There are several examples, but I will only quote a few. A president who goes against the Constitution of the Republic, a president who practices acts of dishonesty, who attacks budget law. These are some of his acts that can be recognized as crimes of responsibility. If those acts are committed, any person can request impeachment.
Bolsonaro has also come under fire for his move to increase the retirement age as part of his controversial pension reform plan. It mandates a minimum retirement age of 65 for men and 62 for women at the end of a 12-year transition period. Many workers fear they may not live to see these benefits.
In this short period, Bolsonaro's government has taken measures that clearly collide with the constitutional text. For example, the pension question, an initiative of a president that alters the pension regime of his country. The way he presented it to Congress, I don't have any doubts that a strict and deep analysis of that proposal will result in the understanding that he's attacking fundamental rights and disrespecting the Constitution.
Every controversial statement made by Bolsonaro is fueling more public debate about his impeachment, and those discussions are taking place everywhere, on the streets, in workplaces, and in so many other spaces. Experts say it is quite possible this will go before the National Congress.
How is it that a police officer who approaches a person in a violent manner, how is he going to behave when he listens to the country's chief saying that here killing is something he can do and that he will have the state's support with the measures he wants to take?
The tweets Bolsonaro shared triggered an avalanche of criticism, no doubt. Some have even accused the president of violating social media laws and regulations.
The Prime Minister of Barbados has been calling on Barbadians to stay the course as she delivers her first budget on the Parliament. Stabilizing economic growth and lowering the personal income tax would be the highlight of the fiscal package. In her presentation, Mia Mottley said the government cannot transform Barbados' economy until there is growth. She also assured that she will be cutting expenses while she will continue cutting expenses while still investing in education and healthcare. Last year, the IMF and the government of Barbados agreed on a $290 million economic assistance plan.
As of today, our reserves have risen from just over the 400 million that they were when we inherited them at the end of May last year. At its lowest point, it was actually down to 300 and change in March. But as of 400 million odd we inherited, today our reserves stand at $1.1 billion. told by my economic advisors that we shall hit that 15-week import cover in the next few days on current trajectory.
A red alert has been declared in the Beni department of Bolivia after heavy floods left 31 dead and 28 missing. The civil defense minister says that constant rain has caused the river to overflow, affecting over 93 municipalities and more than 17 million people. The meteorological office said that other 6 departments, including La Paz, were under orange alert. Strong rains are predicted until next weekend. The Indonesian government on Wednesday made an appeal to the world for more urgent aid to flood victims. The government called for more efforts to help resettle the people affected by the recent disastrous flood. The shelters in Papua province, where they are currently being sheltered, have become overcrowded. Flash floods and landslides hit the Jayapura district in the province on March 16, killing 107, and 93 are still missing.
There are more than 2,000 people in our shelter who are from the affected areas, such as Kemiri, Social, Chahim. Their numbers keep changing as they are different between day and night.
Meanwhile, residents in Beira, Mozambique have started to clean up after Cyclone Idai. Powerful winds and flooding killed hundreds of people and left a massive trail of destruction. Roads in and around Beira are swamped, complicating rescue efforts. Aid had to be flown in by helicopter or plane. And in Zimbabwe, residents of Chimanimani have also been cleaning away the rubble and sorting through what little they have left in the aftermath of Cyclone Idai. Chimanimani was among the worst hit areas, with more than 100 houses being completely destroyed by heavy rains, mudslides and raging winds. The cyclone also washed away crops, ripped bridges and brought massive sinkholes that swallowed up roads. Strong winds have prevented military rescue helicopters from reaching some of the most affected areas. The Australian government has started evacuation procedures on the north of the nation as Cyclone Trevor looms near. According to officials, Trevor is expected to make landfall on March 23rd and will likely develop into a Category 4 severe tropical storm. Meanwhile, Cyclone Veronica is currently headed towards Western Australia, causing the clearance of key iron ports on the west coast.
What is being undertaken right now is the largest evacuation prior to a cyclone we have seen in the Territory's history. The severity of the storm, the significant threat it poses, as well as the complications that come with the remoteness of the area led to the decision to commence evacuations in the area yesterday. It is being well planned, carefully managed and calmly managed.
Angola's capital, Luanda, has been hit by petrol shortages, and it's affecting the day-to-day life of many people whose livelihoods depend on being able to drive. Angola is one of the leading countries in Africa for oil production. The state-owned oil firm Sonangol has assured consumers the fuel supply will be tackled and said the shortages was caused by a logistical problem. This last happened in 2017.
Since yesterday, I have hardly been able to arrive at work due to a lack of fuel, and we know almost nothing about the shortage, nor why all the gas stations in Kasenga are in the same situation.
We're taking one last break. Stay with us.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, Telesur, a news source from South America and the Caribbean.
Welcome back. Hours after Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro met with U.S. President Donald Trump, their military alliance seems to be evolving rapidly. The President of the United States confirmed his intentions to forge an agreement between NATO members to incorporate Brazil as a full member of the organization. If ratified, Brazil will become the first country in Latin America to join NATO. The statement was made just a day after the U.S. President announced his intention to make Brazil an official non-NATO ally.
We had a great meeting today. As I told President Bolsonaro, I also intend to designate Brazil as a major non-NATO ally, or even possibly, if you start thinking about it, maybe a NATO ally. Have to talk to a lot of people, but maybe a NATO ally, which will greatly advance security and cooperation between our countries.
The European Parliament's main center-right group has suspended Hungary's ruling party, FtS, over concerns it violated the rule of law. The decision means that Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban's party cannot attend party meetings, has no voting rights, and can't propose candidates for posts. And all this comes after widespread calls for Orban's party to be disciplined over its anti-immigration policies and controversial judicial reforms. The decision will likely curb Orban's attempts to lead the EU's parliamentary elections in May. Fighters of the Syrian Democratic Forces are celebrating the fall of Baghouz, the last Islamic State group enclave. They have been dancing and shouting in celebration with their comrades. After the intense fighting, which lasted for weeks, fighters, mostly Kurdish, are praising the liberation of the region.
The joy is twofold. First, because we are going home to our families safely, thank God. And secondly, because we have won. We have eliminated the enemy, the terrorists.
Israeli security forces have opened fire on protesting Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. The Palestinians were protesting against the killing of a teenager by Israeli soldiers. Omar Amin Abu Layla was shot dead by Israeli forces near Ramallah on Tuesday for allegedly resisting arrest. He was accused of carrying out an attack on Israeli soldiers. And Jewish extremist groups have called for a huge raid on the Al-Aqsa Mosque on Thursday. The so-called Temple Mount Group, an umbrella body of Jewish extremist organizations, announced it on Facebook. Israeli security forces have banned many Muslims from accessing the Al-Aqsa Mosque and this compound, but they continue to allow Israeli settlers who wish to perform religious rituals there. Social movements defending refugees and migrants' rights took to the streets of 12 European countries, marking the third anniversary of an agreement made between the EU and Turkey. In the Greek capital Athens, thousands marched to protest against the agreement.
Thousands of people, including refugees and activists, marched in the streets of Athens 3 years after the EU and Turkey signed an agreement known as the Shame Accord. The agreement establishes that people who arrive to the Greek islands from Turkey will be returned to Turkey. It also says that all asylum seekers arriving in Greece cannot leave the country until their asylum requests are approved. This agreement has worsened the conditions for refugees in Greece.
There are more than 70,000 people trapped in very tough conditions. Greece lacks integration programs. Right now, people are being evicted from refugee camps. People is left living at the streets.
In previous years, the rallies were against fascism, and the demonstration against the agreement joined in. However, this year, there were mobilizations focused on protesting against fascism after the recent attack in New Zealand against the Muslim community, in which 50 people were killed.
That was not only an attack against Muslims. We need to know that. In New Zealand, also Jewish people shut down their synagogue to show solidarity. The issue is not Islam, it is fascism.
The father of a young Pakistani, Shehzad Luqman, who was murdered by a member of the fascist party Golden Dawn in 2013, took part in the demonstration.
If we don't take to the streets, if we don't fight against fascism, we won't be able to stop it. That's why I thank everyone who came today to participate in the protest.
Syrian, Iraqi, Afghan, and Kurdish refugees were the majority at the demonstration. They marched toward the headquarters of the European Commission in Greece, and 3 years after the agreement was signed, they believe the reasons to protest in 2016 persist. And they will keep protesting until borders are open and the freedom of movement is recognized as a basic right.
With that, we come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories, as you know, by going to our website, telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, you can find us on Starsat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria. You can join us on social media as well. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.